Imagine if one hobby, 1 year, and one art form could completely change the way we see the world for the better. For the past 12 months, I've been out there chasing down that perfect shot. But what I found went way beyond just a pretty picture. So in today's video, I'm going to take you out onto the hill and share the lessons I've learned from 1 year of landscape photography. Before we get going today, this video is sponsored by Squarespace. If you need a domain name, a website, or an online store, go to squarespace.com or hit the link down below. Like any other year, I thought this one was just going to be about capturing beautiful images. But along the way, something shifted. Every photo, every hike, every collaboration taught me lessons I didn't expect. I nearly quit YouTube this year, but I've come out the other side of that feeling excited and hopeful about the year ahead. So settle in and let me take you through the highs, the lows, the challenges, and the laughs that have made up 1 year of landscape photography. I am excited today because look at the conditions. I've managed to get up to this car park and I'm prepared to sleep in the car. I've got food, I've got a sleeping bag, so I can afford to get stranded for about 48 hours, which could be quite exciting. And I don't think anyone else is going to be able to get up to this car park because my car is 4-wheel drive and just managed to get up. Snowy, wintry conditions, an ideal landscape photography adventure, a wonderland even. But I'm excited because I'm not alone. I have a friend with me today. I'm here with Henry Turner.
Hello ladies and gents. We're getting packed up.
Very impressed with Henry's van here, which he's done mostly himself.
Yeah.
And I think we're set for, are we going to camp if we need to?
Maybe, yeah, I was just going to say, sort of packing as if we're going up Everest, but is what it is. We're prepared and yeah, it's looking good.
It's looking fantastic, isn't it? We'll just, yeah. I think we should just see how we go. Yeah. If we get stuck, don't we? But
exactly.
We're both prepared for it. It's going to be a very exciting day. Let's get packed up and on the trail. Right. On these adventures, I do like to get a photograph in the can early doors because if you don't get something soon, the anxiety starts to build and you feel like you're wasting opportunities. And I actually thought this tree here, which I've photographed before a couple of times, was going to do that for me, especially today with that backdrop. But I've got two problems. Firstly, it's not actually that misty lower down, so the tree is getting lost in the background. And secondly, it is very boggy underfoot. And at the start of this wintry, cold adventure, I do not want to get wet feet. My boots are waterproof, but sometimes a little bit does seep through. So I think we'll mark this one down, maybe get it later on, I don't know. But yeah, I'm going to head back up the hill there to catch up with Henry. Or should I photograph it? I think I'm going to shoot it, just get a quick shot and do it that way. I might just do it handheld. Yes, that's what I'm going to do. Success, I think, actually, looking at that. I managed to get lower down and that gave me a little bit of separation between the top branches of the tree and the background, and that bottom part of the image has a lot of texture in it and interest with that snow. So yeah, that's worked out a lot better than I thought it was going to. I'm glad. I'm glad I did it. I have a suspicion we're not going to get very far today because there's just epic compositions in all directions. Henry is currently just photographing that scene there, which I love, and I probably will capture that in a minute.
All of these silver birch trees down here, you can see they've got this like subtle maroon colour as they do in winter. They're sort of my foreground, and I'm zooming in about 50 mil. And then we've got Castle Crag just looming off in the distance, looking beautiful in all the sort of mist or the distant snowfall. And just trying to select the correct shutter speed to capture the motion of the snow just slightly. I'm thinking about 1/30th of a second, but I think this one's going to come out all right. I want it to look a little bit like a pencil sketch, but I mean, beautiful scene. We just said to each other, we are not going to go anywhere today. Like, this is going to be tough in a good way.
Right, so I wasn't planning to talk through this one, but it's just kind of epic really, so I'm going to do it. Still see it a little bit. There's some mist up on the hills there, little cloud, Castle Crag in the distance, coming in and out of the mist. And as it snows more, these trees are capturing all that snow and looking better and better and better. I am trying to capture some of the snow as well. I've had to actually go down to 1/100th of a second, I think, to capture some of the flakes. I'm now at f8. I've experimented with f11. I'm at ISO 320. Yeah, just focusing and shooting. It's so atmospheric. It's so moody, but it is going to be a monochromatic image. I mean, the file you're going to see will be full colour, as you can see there, compared to the blue of my top. It is completely monochromatic with a tiny bit of orangey yellow in there from the dead bracken and the wintry trees. Interesting image in that sense, but so atmospheric. Lovely bit of snow, and it's all about the contrast between the darker areas and the lighter areas. And yeah, just you have to kind of take a moment when it's like this to just appreciate it. Out with a mate in this landscape, doing photography on a Tuesday. Very fortunate really. Very grateful. Right, I'm gonna try and catch Henry up, but the conditions are really quite challenging now. It's just relentless snow and it's really wet, so keeping all the gear dry, the cameras particularly, and the lenses, it's becoming a real challenge. My lens cloth is soaking wet. My gloves, and my other gloves is now soaking wet, so I've had to bust out the big Gore-Tex ones, which makes operating the camera a lot more difficult. The temperature's not too bad. It's about -2 or 3, I think, probably at this sort of elevation today, which is not too bad. It's just the wetness of it all, and the wind's getting up as well, which does make your face take a bit of a battering. But I'm now just following Henry's footsteps to try and discover where he is. Despite the excellent conditions, it is a challenge just being out in them. That's always the case in this sort of weather. It's a trade-off. And the comfortable thing to do right now would be to go back to the car or the pub or a cafe or something, but that's not what this is about. It's about trying to have an adventure and make something interesting and have an experience that will be fun in the long term rather than the challenge it is right at the moment. But when I just know the memory of this is going to be brilliant though. Whew. It's going to be a day to remember. As the snow turned to rain, I was reminded, as photographers, we are capturing the living landscape. It's forever changing, beautiful in all its forms, and it often feels like a duty to capture it. We're obliged to tell its story for others to enjoy. Whilst our steps there are fleeting and we retreat to our comforts, the landscape remains steadfast and alluring, ready to reward the next visitor, willing to put in the work to get there. Right, we'll be back out on the hill in just a second, but as you know, this video is sponsored by Squarespace, and in my opinion, Squarespace is just the best place for photographers to build their own website. The main reason for this is it's just so easy to use. You just go to squarespace.com, or you can click the link down below, type in what you want to do, choose a template, add some of your own words and a few pictures, and before you know it, you'll have a unique and beautiful looking website. It's now even easier too, because Squarespace has introduced some AI tools to assist you. With Squarespace Design Intelligence, you can create a custom template and the AI will assist you with the copy, like creating video or product descriptions. It's incredibly powerful and allows you to focus on the things that matter most to you. Squarespace will also grow with you. If you want to convert your website into an online store to start selling things like prints, books, workshops, calendars, mugs, whatever takes your fancy, you can do that just as easily. So if you've been putting off making your own website before, why not give it a try moving in to 2025? So go to the link down below or to squarespace.com to start your free trial today. And once you've set up and you're happy with what you've created, use the offer code FIRSTMAN. That's right, FIRSTMAN. Tell them I sent you there. You'll get 10% off your first purchase. You join me today on a blustery and windy moor, but it's foggy, it's cold, and it's pretty beautiful in all honesty. Not sure what quite is going to happen, but I know we're going to take some photos and have a little adventure, so let's go. I am actually set up for my first shot, and I try not to talk about the weather that often on this channel because it can be pretty boring, but it does make an interesting photograph. But it is the first or second week in January and it's really cold. It's damp and wet and windy, and to be honest, in January I like it when it snows, so my spirits are probably not as high as they should be, and yeah, finding it hard. This morning I am finding it hard, and that is the reality of getting up and doing landscape photography in the middle of January, I think. Right, so let's try and be more positive about this because I am excited about the shot. So what I am attracted to when I was walking along the path just back there is that tree there particularly, and I like it because of the sort of overall outline shape of it, which I think is nice. The way the trunk sort of breaks up into 4 different pieces is actually really interesting, and then most importantly I like the way it's framed by the one to the left and a little bit of the one to the right, although that is now causing me a bit of a problem because I'm not quite sure how to shoot it, and I think what I'm going to have to do is end up doing it a few ways. First composition that popped into my mind is just using that main tree and then that one to the left sort of disappearing into the fog. The second one, I quite like the 3 trees there, but then I also like the wider vista, the panorama across the scene there, giving you that context of it disappearing into the mist with the wood there on the left, and there's a road behind there which you might be able to hear as well. The second issue is a technical one because it's actually pretty windy, not excessively, but there is enough movement in the trees to require quite a bit of a faster shutter speed, and because it's still quite dark, I'm going to have to up the shutter speed to compensate for the movement or to stop the movement in the trees, and then bring the ISO up. I think I'm also going to bring the aperture, make the aperture bigger as well, because I don't particularly need the whole image to be sharp because it's naturally disappearing into that softer fog, so I can allow the lens to do that as well, and it may even enhance that aspect of the image. So my current settings, f5.6, I'm at 1/100th of a second, which I think should freeze the movement, and then my ISO 1250, and I'm focusing on the tree, the bigger tree in the foreground as best as I can. 2-second timer, firing that away. Let's just zoom in and check if it's sharp, which it certainly is not. So let's take that again. Always check your images for sharpness. You can't just assume that your camera's got it right. My eyes are not good enough to manual focus anymore, so I'm always relying on the camera. Right. Talking through that and taking that picture has properly lifted my spirits because it's got me excited about the photography again. It's one of the things I love about making these videos is this, whilst I'm trying to be enthusiastic for you, it feeds back into myself. So yeah, happy with that. Another thing with Woodland is I find it's fairly easy to give in to the temptation to think that a lot of woodland photography looks the same. And if you've seen one woodland photograph, you've seen them all. And I've got to say, I'm guilty of giving into that temptation sometimes. But I think as someone who tries to make those images, it's important to look past that, because when you do see one that resonates, when you do capture one that has something special, it's so unique and so satisfying. It makes it all worthwhile. Certainly with me, there's no secret to it other than just repetition, doing it over and over again, getting out into the woodland, trying to make some pictures, and then occasionally coming up with something really, really special. But I've said over and over so many times before that we shouldn't always just be looking for unique pictures. Just make pictures. Make pictures of the things you find interesting. And then a lot of the time, at least occasionally, you're gonna make unique pictures of a scene or a set of conditions that no one's ever seen before. That's always the key though, isn't it? Just get out and enjoy what you're doing, and don't worry about what anyone thinks of your work or you. Just make it, put it out there, and move on to the next one. That's certainly my trick. Right, so I'm set up for another image, and this is much more my kind of shot, really. Out in the open, and we're photographing trees still. Does that count as woodland? What even is woodland photography? Do you actually have to be in a wood, or just near a wood, or photographing trees? What counts as woodland photography? I don't know. Sometimes I feel it's just photographing trees, because I love to do that. Look how the fog has just cleared before me, and the sun is almost pushing through. But I have already captured the image I'm taking. But just, did you see, whilst I was talking, how that completely changed the mood and the scene? Because the photograph I've made has now completely disappeared, because those trees now just get completely lost in the background. But a second ago, and it's probably coming back in right now, the fog is rolling back in. You can actually see it happening. That is absolutely fascinating to watch, the speed at which things change. I absolutely love it. One of the things I've always loved about being in the moors is the bleakness of it and the speed that it changes. I think nature is beautiful in all of its forms, and a lot of the time that's the sort of thing I like to capture. And I think this set of trees here is really showing up the bleakness of these moors, and I think a good way to capture that is to do it in a panorama, because it gives you that wider perspective to look at, and you can scan around and it gives a bigger sense of the mood. So all I'm doing is I have the camera set up in panorama mode, and basically all that means is that the tripod is flat, leveled off, and then I can roll the camera around on the tripod with this 70 to 200 lens mounted with the lens mount, which puts it right over the point of rotation, or sometimes we call it the nodal point, and then I can rotate the camera around and capture that panorama. So I'm focusing on that middle set of trees, and then I'm going to go a third of the way into the image every single time, using the rule of thirds on the camera to guide me. And it's starting to come back in now, so let's go ahead and do it. First one, 2-second timer, and then go around there like that, and again, and then a third in again. Let that fire off. You can see the speed at which things are changing like that, and then in again. Let's do that, and then I see the gap there. That's going to be the last one, and then if we have a look, there we go, that's going on nicely. Yeah, and I'll show you that now, but I feel good about that one. The bleak moors in winter in the mist. I think it really captures the mood. Can you see the tree behind me there? Those storms have caused so much devastation to these woods, it's unreal. But one phrase that I'm not a fan of is stay safe, because I don't think that's what life is about. Life is about having adventures, taking risks, and then telling stories about those things. It's the risk takers whose stories interest us. It's just the way it is. But I think the important thing to do is to take measures to mitigate those risks so we can then go and enjoy our life. I do that in the form of some safety equipment, which I keep in this little pouch here. And the first one is a water filter. Now, I think you don't want to run out of water, do you? And I just always carry this with me because you can put this end straight into the water, give it a squeeze, and the water comes out of there. Now this claims that you can take it out of sort of dirty standing water, but I wouldn't do that if I didn't have to. I'd generally try and use it out of fast flowing streams higher up in the mountains and things. Next we have a compass. Like I said, I don't use a paper map, but I still carry a compass just in case. I have a whistle if I get into trouble. My bag also has a whistle on it, but I carry one in here as well. Spare laces. I think that is a really good tip. Take spare laces for your boots, because not only will you be able to lace up your boot again if a lace snaps, which does happen, but you also have some string or a rope type material if you were to need that to make a tourniquet or something like that if you got into trouble. I then also have a knife. This is quite a nice knife there. Camping, hunting type knife for emergencies. That one is made by Gerber, if you can see that. I then have this thing, which is pretty cool. This is an arc lighter, and you just turn it on and then press that. Can you see that? It makes the craziest sound. But that is a lighter, and it's surprisingly effective. It works in the wind and all sorts of stuff like that. And it runs on electricity, which you can charge up with a USB cable. It makes a horrible sound, but yeah, it could save your life if you need a fire to keep you warm. And then in the bag, I have a first aid kit. I am quite well first aid trained, so if you're ever in trouble and you see me on the hill, give me a shout and I'll come and help you. I was got praised for my bandages by the ambulance service. I was always quite proud of that. Then a survival bag. Now that could be an absolute lifesaver. It's thin, it's a big plastic bag basically, but you just get in it, like in the pictures there, and if you fall and you're injured and you're in the mountains and it's cold and you can't go anywhere, it's going to keep you dry and it builds up some warmth. I'm sure it'll get sweaty, but that thing could save your life. Simple safety equipment that mitigates the risks and allows us to go and do these exciting hikes and make these pictures. I just found that in my bag as well. A spork, absolute essential. I'm set up for my final shot of the day, and the reason we're talking about this gear, the reason we carry all this gear around with us, is to experience moments like this. I've had a fantastic walk today and I'm rewarded with this absolutely stunning scene, that warm light coming through the clouds, coming through the haze and creating a beautiful photographic opportunity. It's so exciting after putting all that effort in, getting all that exercise, building that well-being, building the creativity as the day goes on, and I'm now surrounded with a beautiful amount of colour as the reward. Just look at that light. Look at those rays coming through the clouds there. Just stunning. Such rich reward. And it's all thanks to that preparation and having these bits of gear that facilitate this experience. And I'm absolutely buzzing now. All that's left is for me to capture this image. I'm at f11 1/13 of a second, and ISO 100 bracketing. Oh my goodness, that is just fantastic. The colour in the sky and those rays, those beams of light coming through. Such a great feeling. For me, this is what hiking and photography is all about. There is no better way to experience either. At the start of any week, I set out with simple goals: to make pictures, make prints, and have a great time. But in the world of professional landscape photography, things don't always go according to plan. It's February, it's cold, and it's windy, and all the elements are in place for a roller coaster week. Now today, I've come to a place that you probably will not have heard of before. I'm excited about it, but it is very grey and very windy. So I've decided to challenge myself trying to make some good images in an unfamiliar location in bad weather. Now in today's video, I'm also using a new vlog camera, and I've had to change my setup a little bit. I'm unfamiliar with it. It does have a gimbal, so I'm hoping it'll be a little bit smoother. One thing I'm a little bit concerned about is the audio, because I'm having to use a different microphone setup. I'm not sure if I'm getting clean audio, so you may never see this video. Well, if you're seeing this, then it's panned out all right. Right, so I'm set up for my first shot. I really hope the audio sounds okay. I'm facing straight into the wind at the moment. It's extremely difficult on the side of this hill, but that there is my view, and I think it's a fantastic one. The light is actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be today, and that's working pretty well for me. But the composition that I'm working on here doesn't include any of the sky, and it's all about that S-curve, that line going down the center of the frame, just guiding you around to the trees, the intersecting lines of the hills, and I just think it looks really, really nice. I'm using the 70-200 lens to sort of zoom in, pick that detail out of that line, and then eliminate the area around this. So I want to eliminate some of the trees to the left of the frame, and then I want to take the sky out completely. And that's mainly because this landscape was carved out, I think, by glaciers. So it's a really interesting shape and forms of the hills, but then you get that really harsh horizon line, which just for me spoils the whole thing. So I'm bringing my composition down, bringing my perspective down to eliminate the sky. It's really difficult to conditions though. It's really windy, and it's getting pretty cold as well. So that is producing some technical challenges with the camera, mainly in the form of having this long lens on and the wind moving the lens about. So I've had to up the ISO to 400. I've gone down to an aperture, oh my God. This is not good. Oh God, oh. I'm at an aperture of f8 and then 1/80th of a second, and that's ISO 400. So that's giving me the shutter speed I need. I'm then focusing on the trees down in the valley there, and with a 2-second timer, just getting that shot off. Oh God, it's so unpleasant. It's like 20 miles an hour constant and gusting up to 40 or 50 miles an hour. I'll show you that image now and see what you think. Hello and good morning. Right, it's Wednesday. I have made it out of bed and welcomed to a pretty beautiful morning. The conditions are not as good as I thought they were going to be, but there's a beautiful feel to it. We're in blue hour at the moment. The sun hasn't come up yet, and there's a little hint of colour on the horizon. I'm feeling quite positive. I think there's going to be at least one little shot to get, but it's such a beautiful morning. Not a breath of wind because I'm protected from that wind by the cliffs there. Yeah, it's just lovely. Look at all these beautiful rock pools. There's a slightly bigger pool, patch of wet sand over there, which I really like. And that's sort of then shooting towards the colour in the sky as well. It's really cold. It's about -1. So I'm grateful that there isn't any wind. Right, so I am set up for my first shot, and it's just looking beautiful. There is a small gap in those clouds for the sun to get through, which is really rather exciting, I think. I'm hoping as the sun rises, the light's gonna hit these clouds even more, but at the moment it's off in the distance, so I'm zooming in to fill the frame with that colour, which I think is going to work really well. I've then got this really big pool right in front of me, which is just beautiful and reflecting the light from below, reflecting the colour. Nothing complicated at all. I'm just playing around with where I put the horizon as well. I'm not using the rule of thirds. The horizon's actually going to be somewhere in the middle of the frame, which you may not always do, but I think for this composition, it's just working well. F11 at the moment, 1/25th of a second, ISO 100 with the current light conditions. So I'm just going to frame up again, and yeah, that's just looking lovely. The rocks look nice. 2-second timer, and fire it away. Let's pan around, zoom out a bit. Oh yes, that is it. Get some of the cliff in as well. Oh, this is going to be lovely. The reflection of that water, the pool in front of me, is just beautiful. So now I have some of the cliff in it. Oh, the sun's coming up. It's exciting. I have the cliff off to the right-hand side. I have the sun coming up in the left-hand side. Ooh, that's nice. I'm going to raise it up a little bit though and zoom in a tiny touch. I'm liking the horizon kind of on the golden ratio actually at the moment, because the sun's coming up. It's coming up. Oh, that is just lovely. I'm not talking through it very well, but the sun is rising now. The blue compared to the yellow and the pinks is just fantastic. You get those mornings when it's just so exciting. Hello, in today's video we are discussing photography's biggest headaches.
You can't even take a decent picture. You're useless!
Before we get going today though, I am with Mally Davis for the day, who was a huge regular member of a more recent video. Now it's absolutely brutal, just like bullets of ice in your face as we're walking up this hill trying to make it to those trees there to get a bit of shelter. Just like blades hitting your face. Woo. A big annoyance for me as a landscape photographer is the weather and the elements, and today is a perfect example of that. And it's frustrating because we all know it's the light that makes the image. If you get good weather conditions, then your image is going to be absolutely stunning. Today is so changeable. 1 minute you've got hail, and then the next minute you've got this just truly stunning light. I mean, look over there. I've got my camera set up to capture that, and it's just stunning. Mally's capturing some footage down there as well. It's the spring now. We're into spring. You got snow on the mountains over there. Just looking absolutely epic. I'm hoping when we get to the top, I'll get a better view of that. But I really love the light from over there, from that sort of low in the sky sun that's just producing so much drama. But it's painful, and it takes a lot of resilience to put up with these conditions. I slept in the car last night as well, so I didn't get the best night's sleep. I'm on the verge of giving up, if I'm honest, and it's the weather that's making me feel like that. Let's capture an image then, because it is, can you see on the back of that camera there just how dramatic that looks? It's just looking stunning. There's just a little hill that I really find appealing, and that's what I'm focusing on. It's got really interesting light on it. It's surrounded by the weather. It's a lovely form. There's some nice shape as well in the scene. Just fantastic. I'm at f8. 1/100th of a second, ISO 100. It's so full of drama, just utterly stunning. That's the thing, you put up with the weather. It's annoying, especially when we've had a rubbish winter anyway, so much rain, and I'm ready for a bit of nice weather, if I'm honest. But when you then capture a keeper like that, or what I think is going to be a keeper, all your troubles just disappear. All of that difficulty just evaporates, and you're left with just this natural high, this kind of huge boost of creativity, and it feels great.
call yourself a photographer? Think you're a photographer? You're a YouTuber. You can't even take a decent picture. Every single video you put out, there's like 2 or 3. And we're supposed to be impressed by this. It's getting worse as well with your namby-pamby gimbal fucking autofocus on your mush. People look up to you. People think you're someone who's a pro, and you're gonna show people how they can be pros. Look at me! I've got nowhere! You're useless! You're not even caring for the landscape that's around you. What do you think this is? We've got one life, one earth, and you're going out in your petrol guzzling. I can't do it.
So funny.
Right, come on. When you hit a certain age, you can moan about anything. As we all know, my biggest photography annoyance has to be not being able to exhibit or get my photography in a gallery. To be able to have a show, put out my work, you know, multiple pieces. And painting and everything's fantastic, galleries love it, but photography gets shunned. We never seem to get taken seriously. And I've been into a few galleries and they go, no, sorry, we don't take photography, or we're after a specific nudes, naked women. I'm like, come on, you know, what is it about photography that doesn't make it into a gallery? And I find it quite rude as well that photography's not taken seriously. And yeah, in a nutshell, that's my annoyance.
The hail is insane. Let's take shelter behind these trees, I think. Whew. A few minutes later, another gap in the weather appeared, so we managed to escape the shelter of the woods. The sun came out, and I managed to make 2 images of this scene that had been evading us for most of the morning. We then decided to make a break for the top, and as I approached the summit, the distant mountains started to come into view. Bathed in stunning light, I ran to the top to set up my camera. Faced with one of the most beautiful scenes I've witnessed for quite some time, I planned to discuss the headache of posting images to social media, which these days often feels like a meaningless experience. But as my audio failed to record properly, I was reminded on the top of a mountain with a mate in a very special moment that these are the things that matter. This is what fulfills us. Moments of elation as we have the privilege to be in these places with our cameras, ready to tell the stories and produce the artwork that these occasions deserve.
So beautiful. Oh, I don't know if you can hear it at the top. It's so, it must be ghosting. Yes. Yes, man.
Right, after a much tougher than expected climb, I am approaching the top, but I'm surrounded by this beautiful cotton grass. I was thinking of making an image of it because it just looks great, but you've got to get quite close up to it. Otherwise, it just looks like white blobs in the picture. And I wanted to get some of the backdrop in, which you can just get a quick sneak peek of over there. There's then a tarn down there, which looks good. But I want to just get to the top, this last little push to the top, because the light is just looking beautiful. The last few meters, the cairn comes into view. Let me spin you around so you can come with me. There we go, emerging onto the top. It's always such a lovely moment. And you're sharing it with me. The wind hits us, and there we go. Yes, just look at those views. And look at the light. It's just looking utterly fantastic. I'm out of breath. The shafts of light coming through, absolutely spectacular. Looks great on the mountain over there. Right, I'm going to put you down, get the camera set up and try and make something. Right, I've been set up for about half an hour now, just playing around with that light there because I think it just looks stunning. I've tried it in two different ways. I've done a panorama because the scene almost lends itself to that. It's just this shaft here that I love, and that's what I want to capture. So the panorama should be good, although I'm not sure it's going to stitch together. I did it quite rushed. And then I've got the 24 to 70 lens on. I mean, it's 70mm, just picking out the details. It's that kind of shot that I'm a really big fan of. Just putting a longish lens on, focusing in or zooming in and pulling out the details, pulling out the interesting shapes and the interesting colours and the interesting bits of light. Those sort of shots are right up my street. And what a lovely evening it's turning into. I've got the warm sun on my face. Yeah, there we go. And there's so much haze in there, which is really adding some interest as well. I think that's what's created such defined shafts in that light. And I felt that walking up because it was very humid and I got really quite sweaty. Although it's the middle of June, I'm absolutely freezing. My hands are cold, my ears are cold, and I could really do with some gloves and a hat. But I didn't bring them because, you know, it's like the middle of June. I am a man who absolutely loves his seasons. As you've seen on this channel numerous times, I'm comfortable and enjoy being in wintry conditions. I'm comfortable in -5, -10 conditions in the winter. But in the summer, if it gets below 15 degrees C, I'm an absolute wimp. And that's what's happening now. But we have to suffer a little bit for our art, don't we? Although my hands and ears are cold and I'm suffering in that way, there's no other way at the moment that I'm suffering, because this is just fantastic. When I run workshops and tours and things like that, and I have clients with me, one of the things I often tell them, and I guess it acts as a little bit of reassurance, is that when you're in a beautiful landscape like this, where seemingly there are images at every angle, sometimes it is the case that there isn't an image. A good scene on its own does not make an image. And I think that's the case with this view here of this tarn. Admittedly, it's a spectacular sight. You've got that warm evening light on it. You've got specks of white down there with the cotton grass, but it's not going to make a good photograph. Again, just because you've got good light doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a good photo. Joe Cornish told me that, and I think it's very, very true. This scene here is just not going to work. I've played around with it, I've zoomed in, done a wide shot, and I just don't think it looks good. Sometimes you've just got to sort of accept that to our eyes it looks fantastic, you can sit and enjoy the moment, but getting a great shot may not be possible. Right, so we're probably about 5 minutes before the sun dips behind the mountain now. And kind of frustratingly, the cloud has almost cleared completely. Now this morning, when it was wall-to-wall grey, I hadn't done anything for clear blue skies, but I'm not complaining because the light is still fantastic. And there are a few clouds just to the left of the sun which is blinding me right now. I have a few technical problems with this image as well, is the fact that the sun is in the scene. And I actually think it's a pretty nice scene because there's just some lovely forms in the mountains. I've got the bit of cotton grass in the foreground because I'm at a really wide angle. Well, not really wide, about 24mm actually, but because I'm shooting into the sun, I need to obviously bear that in mind, that I'm going to get flare, so I want to control that. So two things I'm doing. Firstly, I'm shooting at f16 because I want to get that starburst effect. The more you stop down your aperture, the better the effect that has. And the more aperture blades your lens has, the more streaks that the sun is going to provide. Don't know how many this 16 to 35mm lens has, don't really care. So I'm just going to focus about a third of the way into the scene, and then I'm going to bracket the shots as well, taking my first one, f16, 1/125th of a second, ISO 100. So that's the first one, and then I'm going to use the thumb technique. So I'm just going to put my thumb in front of the lens, covering the sun, and then do it again and fire it off like that. So I'll show you that image in a minute. Yeah, it's been an interesting few weeks not posting to you. I think I posted once in about 6 weeks. And it's been a lovely little break, although I was getting a little bit stressed that I wasn't posting because I feel a certain duty towards people to sort of share these videos. And I know people probably don't think that's necessary, but that's just how I feel. And over the last few weeks, I've been doing other stuff. I did a couple of talks for Canon. I did a talk at Cambrian Cameras in Colwyn Bay at their little photo festival, which was fantastic. I love making these videos for people. I just don't love YouTube at the moment. I've been in touch with quite a few of you again who are using landscape photography to recover from trauma in their lives and difficult things in their lives. And it's just inspiring communicating with you. So please do make sure you comment down below because, yeah, hearing from you makes this whole thing worthwhile. And that is pretty much one of the only reasons I'm still making these videos. That's not true. I like making them and I like sharing the adventures and telling stories. And I like doing that with my photos and I like doing that with these videos. So as the sun dips behind the mountain, I'd just like to say thanks. Right, so I'm set up for my first image. Now, to explain this one, I have to take you back to last week, where I found myself surrounded with some beautiful cotton grass. And I said I wanted to photograph it with the mountains in the background, but I didn't because I felt you had to get really close up to them. And once you do that to make the cotton grass look good, the mountains in the distance look really tiny. But then, when I was editing the video, I thought, why didn't I use a long lens to compress the background? Because when you put the long lens on, it squeezes everything together in your frame, back to front, and you get that lovely compression effect. So I've been lucky enough to find this cute little cluster of cotton grass, and again, I have a mountain backdrop. So this time, I'm going to do what I thought would be a good idea and try and compress it by using this 70 to 200 lens. I'm having to get down really low, which is making it a little bit awkward to look through the viewfinder to try and compose the image. Now, the background is going to be very blown out, but I quite like that because you can still see that it's mountains and it is actually working. And because I'm in at 200, even this little cluster of cotton grass that I've found is filling the frame. I've then got the horizon kind of towards the top of the frame, possibly just a little bit above the rule of thirds. And then, yeah, just it's looking really quite nice. The sun's just dipped behind a cloud, which isn't the best because I want that cotton grass lit up with that warm sort of late afternoon or early evening sunshine. The other problem I'm having is a slightly technical one because it's quite windy. I'm currently at f11 because I don't want the background to be completely blown out, and even at f11 the background is still very blurred. I'm then at 1/400th of a second, which I think is going to be enough to freeze the action. And to get that shutter speed with that aperture, I've had to boost the ISO up to 320, which is still going to give me a nice clean image. And now I'm just going to keep firing as the sun comes to its full fruition. The cotton grass is moving around in the wind, so I'm just going to fire off quite a few frames and then pick the one that I like the best with the cotton grass in just the right place for the composition to complement the background. There's a fly on the lens now. Right, one more I think as that sun really comes out. I'm actually really pleased with that. I'm still waiting for sunset and I've just been flying the drone. The conditions are quite extraordinary. If you just look down there, it's almost like there's going to be an inversion and it just feels like the mist is descending all the time. I mean, it could be absolutely incredible. It looks good at the minute as well. I'd be shooting directly into the sun, but to be honest, I don't really know what to do. Probably just another panorama maybe, but don't really know what to do at the moment, but it does look extraordinary. It's so still now as well. There's not a breath of wind, which is amazing because other times I've been up here, it's been a little bit blustery. But the downside of that is the amount of insects and midges. I am just midgy food right now. Strange atmosphere, but fantastic. Right, I think my best opportunity is now upon me because the sun is behind the cloud above the mountain still, but it's sending light streaks through, which are just looking fantastic, and they're getting better and better. So what I'm going to do is a panorama, a bit like the image last week, and just go all the way around here. Oh, those light streaks look good. So yeah, I'm just going to start going around and I'll explain it as I go because there's so much atmosphere, but it's actually really difficult to shoot. So I haven't quite known what to do. And the light's been changing all the time and the streaks are changing, but they're so bright. So I'm going round, moving a third of the way into the image every time. I'm at f11, I'm at 1/200th of a second and ISO 100. And I'm bracketing two stops either side. So this is a bracketed HDR, or panorama basically. And I hope it's gonna work. Just things are changing so quickly all the time. The individual frames on the back of the camera just look stunning. So I'm going around as quickly as I can. It's probably going to be about 20 images. Well, that'll be 60, won't it, if I'm bracketing with two stops either side. But I need to do that because it's such a big dynamic range. If I get this right, it could be stunning. So 2/3 of the way in each time. 3 shots. Just look at the way it's appearing. Look at those colours. Just looks amazing. I think I might do this a few times because the light's changing so much. I think maybe as well as the sun gets a bit more towards the bottom of that cloud that's just above the mountain, this could get even better. And that's going to be my tactic. I think, oh my goodness, look at the light there now. Let me spin you back around again. This is exciting. It's really exciting, but also a little bit tense because I'm not sure I'm getting exactly what it deserves. I think when you're doing landscape photography, you see all the bugs, absolutely disgusting. When you're doing landscape photography, it can be difficult. I had lost my mojo recently And one of the things I realised last week that I've talked about before and I've known before but I've forgotten is that the hardest step, the hardest barrier to breach is that first step out of the door. Once you've got your camera gear together and you step out the door, it just suddenly gets easier. Then you drive to where you need to be. And you need to be in these staggering locations. Look at the light over there now. And it just all seems to come together. And you get evenings like this. Granted, I'm surrounded by midgies, but I have this whole place to myself. Oh my goodness, what's happening behind me? Here you go again. Let's just take a moment to appreciate that. And these moments are very, very special. And they make you feel good. And they put your life into perspective. There are little things that bother us. There are little things in the daily grind that get us down. And when you come to somewhere like this and you experience nature in this way and you feel connected to the place and to the landscape, all those little worries go away. And the big worries in our life, the real problems, somehow suddenly feel easier to cope with. But I need to go capture that because it's beautiful. So this is the final image, and when I sent it to Canon, they said it was going to look great 44 inches wide. I said, cool, but what if it's 44 inches on the short edge? And they were like, Adam, that's going to make it 3.5 meters long. And I said, but can we? And they said, yeah, why not? So this print is absolutely crazy. It's huge. If I sort of crouch down, I'm already, because it's so big, noticing things that I hadn't particularly noticed on the digital file, and that is particularly the cotton grass down in the bottom corner. You may be able to see it here. It's really nice that that is coming through on the print, and it's going to add an element to that image, which I just didn't notice. I knew it was there, but it wasn't the main part of the image in the digital file. But now it's coming out of this thing in this big, beautiful way. You can really notice it. By printing this big, you're always learning new things about your work and where you can make fine changes just to improve that final product. It's very exciting seeing it come off the printer like this, and I can't wait to lay it out. I have to find somewhere quite big to lay it out. Excited to say the least. And then it just kept printing and printing and printing until after 50 minutes and several litres of ink, it was finally done. But I've been left with something truly spectacular. A 3.5 metre print of my favourite mountain in the world under this beautiful light. It's a thing to behold, and I feel incredibly privileged to have this, and looking at it, it's hard not to think that bigger is better. But it does come with some practical trade-offs. For example, it needs to be on a wall, so getting the light right to capture this footage was pretty much impossible. I also feel pretty exposed. The print is so big that you can see every tiny little imperfection. Everything is on display. If I was printing this big regularly, you would have to be meticulous with your editing. But what a thing. I'm overwhelmed, to be honest, and I just love it. Oh, every time I think of Birmingham, especially from a photography point of view, I think of Verity, who's hiding just behind. Let me spin it around so you can see her. There she is, hiding. But the weather's horrendous, isn't it? It's
Now, it seems like any time I'm in a video, in one of your videos, it rains. So I'm
that
like
has been
literally the rainmaker. It's not good.
If you're making it rain, it's a good thing, though, isn't it?
It's a great British summertime.
One of the things that I've realised as well, though, is that I only do landscape photography. I'm feeling, especially doing it in front of Verity, extremely outside my comfort zone. I guess I've become de-skilled over the years in a way. I don't photograph people anymore unless it's my family with my phone. I don't photograph buildings, and I don't do street photography. So I'm not really sure what I'm doing. So I'm feeling anxious a little bit, I've got to say. in the presence of greatness, especially around Birmingham. However, I've seen this building that's kind of disappearing into the clouds. It just struck me, and I quite like it. I've only got one lens, though, and it's not quite long enough, so I'm gonna have to crop in. But I'm just gonna do it handheld, I think, and zoom right in as far as I can go, and then just frame the tower up a little bit to the left.
There's definitely just a little bit different texture going on.
I like the green, the sort of greeny tint in the windows.
Yes, yes. Those two cranes as well. I like the way that they're almost
Yeah.
pointing in different directions from
Yeah.
each other. That's rather pleasant. So Birmingham's it's one of those places that isn't necessarily known for its photographic nature. Where we are now is a really good indicator of why I really like Birmingham. We're currently down in Gas Street, and Gas Street Basin is it's got this amazing industrial heritage, and it's this lovely juxtaposition between the old and the new. So you've got the boats, the canal boats there that make for a great foreground in any photo. Then you've got the modern architecture like the Cube as well. So all of that kind of sits together, and that's just a lovely summary of why I like Birmingham so much. There's lots of different things going on at once, and it can be a really fun challenge as a photographer to make the most of that and make all of those elements work together. When I started out, landscape photography was far more interesting to me, but I think living in a city almost forced me to consider what it is to apply the landscape set of rules, in so much as there are rules, to a city. So I guess using the same thing, so using the light, how the light plays with the buildings, how the light plays with the landscape, whether that's rural in the city, I think that's kind of what I'm interested in.
And do you feel like a responsibility to the city to document it, or not a
Yeah.
responsibility, but like you're doing a service or a duty to the city?
You know what? I think the city did the duty to me. I don't think I'd have anywhere near the career I had if it wasn't for the fine folk of Birmingham kind of embracing my work and elevating it. And that gave me a platform, not just for my Birmingham stuff, but for the landscape stuff as well. So yeah, I think it's less that Birmingham owes me and more that I owe Birmingham quite a lot.
Right, we've made it to the top, and you can see Henry just there doing a little piece to camera. Right at the top here, a view of Coniston Water. Over in the distance there, I've got this rather large cairn here, which is pretty cool. And then looking towards the Langdales in the distance over there, and I think that's going to be my sunset photo once we've gone up onto that little crag just there for sunset. I think that's the plan. This cloud is looking stunning. High altitude. If it stays like this, we get some colour. It is going to be a fantastic sunset photograph. So stick around for that. But one of the themes of this video, talking about how photography has changed my life, and maybe how photography has changed your life or could change your life, because there's just so many benefits to it, especially doing landscape photography, where you get the physical exercise, but then you also get that boost of your well-being as you're being active and creative. And that's one of the things where it initially changed my life. When I worked as a police officer and I was dealing with all the shit I was dealing with, some very difficult situations, getting out and doing landscape photography, getting that escape from the reality was really important. And it was a really healthy, productive way of getting that escape as well. But then it became a job for me because that's what I wanted. And it's changed my life in numerous ways since then, including doing this YouTube channel. I'm out with a mate today that all came about through this. I've got my friend Andrew Marr, who lives in Australia. I've got a mate in Australia who I talk to regularly because of photography and because of this channel. I'm stood here with just one other person on top of this hill. Often I'm alone and some people see you. And I'm like a complete idiot stood here talking to that lens. But I'm not talking to the lens. I'm talking to you. And I think that's just really special. And it kind of blows my mind every single time. And the beauty of photography is it continues to change my life. More recently, I started making the frames, and that's got me into the woodworking, which has become kind of my new hobby. That's not something I'm going to start talking about, but I love that idea of being new at something again.
So actually for me, you know what? I think I was the other way around from what I hear a lot of other photographers saying. I actually got into the technical side of photography first. I was never into the outdoors, weirdly enough, when I was younger. And then, very long story short, I travelled across Canada and I had my iPhone. I was taking loads of little snaps with my iPhone. By the time I got to the West, I was just mad to take photographs all the time. Eventually got to Vancouver, bought a DSLR, Nikon D3100, and then that got me outdoors then. And then I was like desperate to come back to the UK because I'm so passionate about home. And then I was taking photographs. So yeah, it was like the other way around, but I'm so glad it all happened because now I've fallen in love with this. It's brilliant.
Has photography changed your life?
So for me, obviously, well, maybe not obvious to some of your viewers, but I do this for a living. So in that sense, absolutely amazing. It's a privilege, like unbelievable. But for me, I think the value that I've got is like how I look at the world. It's just completely changed the way I look at the world. Like I'd never been somewhere like this and looking at the way the light's hitting the grass and all this and looking at the way the light's reflecting off Coniston, and that is the best gift I've got from photography. 100% is like, I'll be in some like dingy town somewhere, but I'll still be looking for like little snippets of beauty and stuff like that. Yeah, definitely.
Right, we're into position for the final shot of the day. That moment's coming, that sunset moment that makes these whole days worthwhile. I'm having to hold the camera again because it's very windy and very cold now, and I'm right on this cliff edge, which feels a little bit dodgy. But I wanted to finish this video with a message of hope. And when you're looking at a scene like that and making a photograph of it, it's hard to not feel hopeful. But if, like so many people at the moment, you're suffering from a sense of nihilism, I would firstly encourage you to reassess where you are getting your information from. There are distributors out there who pump fear and aggression and division. And if you go out on the street, that's not really what the real world is like. Find your information from good places, people that are going to be positive and hopeful and share those feelings and inspire you. I think that's the way to do it. You can do that for yourself by going out and creating landscape photography, capturing these moments, being here for these moments. And since getting off social media, something feels different now. I can't quite put my finger exactly on what that is yet, but I just know that there's a whole world out there, and it's beautiful and it's amazing, and we just have to go and find it. Please do check out my website, and I'll see you on another one very, very soon.